Jirai Ando is a high school student with a vivid imagination and a strong love for fantasy stories. When he and his fellow literature club members suddenly gain supernatural powers, he finds himself caught up in an everyday life filled with strange moments, lighthearted situations, and increasingly complicated relationships with the girls around him. Beneath his habit of acting like the hero of an epic adventure, several young women begin showing a level of care and attention that gradually blurs the line between friendship and deeper feelings. As those emotions slowly come to light, an intriguing question begins to emerge. Does Jirai truly understand what is in their hearts, or is the power he possesses not the greatest mystery in his life after all? After school, Hatoko was assigned cleaning duty, so she asked Tomoyo to head to the clubroom first. Tomoyo walked down the school hallway as another ordinary day seemed to pass like any other. As time went on, neither she nor the other members of the literature club realized that the day would become a special one for them. Tomoyo watched the leaves drifting through the air in the wind. When she arrived at the literature club room and opened the door, she was surprised to find Jirai acting as if he were in terrible pain. Jirai told Tomoyo not to come any closer and urged her to escape while he was still conscious. Unfortunately, Tomoyo paid no attention to his performance. Jirai wondered why Tomoyo could not play along the way the other club members usually did. Tomoyo was not happy to hear that and admitted that she was tired of Jirai's behavior. Jirai insisted that everyone else could follow along with his act. Tomoyo did not believe him and challenged him to prove it with the other club members. Not long afterward, Hatoko arrived. She was startled to see Jirai shouting in pain, so she rushed over and immediately called an ambulance. Jirai never expected Hatoko to actually contact emergency services. He quickly apologized and explained that he was completely fine. Tomoyo had already predicted that the others would not go along with his act. Jirai refused to accept that and decided to make the situation even more dramatic. As soon as someone else approached the room, he loudly shouted to startle them. Unfortunately for him, the person who entered was Chifuyu. Jirai immediately apologized and admitted that he had only been joking. Sayumi arrived shortly afterward and wondered why Jirai had frightened the younger students. She promptly restrained his arm, causing Jirai to cry out and explain that it had all been a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Hatoko prepared a drink for Chifuyu and apologized for what had happened. Chifuyu understood that Jirai often behaved in strange ways like that. Hatoko said she did not mind his role-playing as long as it did not inconvenience other people. Jirai argued that it was not a game but a simulation. He claimed that if his left hand ever transformed someday, he wanted to know how everyone would react and deal with it. Tomoyo stated that she would not fight him because his hand was never going to transform in the first place. She wondered why he felt the need to repeat the same act every day. Jirai responded by asking whether Tomoyo could prove that supernatural powers were completely impossible. Tomoyo replied that logic suggested such things did not exist. However, Jirai countered by asking whether her logic could explain the mysteries surrounding the birth of the universe and the existence of living beings. As Jirai continued his passionate speech, his friends simply regarded it as another lecture from someone suffering from chunibyo. Unexpectedly, a light suddenly appeared from Jirai's right hand. Even Tomoyo was stunned and asked how he had done it. Jirai himself did not understand because he felt he had done nothing at all. The light continued to grow brighter, causing everyone to panic. 6 months later, the bell signaling the end of the school day rang. Hatoko once again asked Tomoyo to head to the clubroom first because she needed to finish her cleaning duty. Tomoyo made her way to the literature clubroom, and when she arrived, she found Jirai shouting and clutching his hand as usual. Tomoyo informed him that they had received complaints from a neighboring club, so she wanted him to stop causing disturbances with his dramatic performances. By that time, they had all obtained supernatural powers. Not long afterward, Hatoko arrived and Jirai immediately resumed his usual act. As always, Hatoko prepared to call an ambulance, but Jirai stopped her. He dramatically claimed that the heat within his body was becoming unbearable. Suddenly, Hatoko used her power to create water and trapped Jirai inside it. Jirai struggled to breathe, and Tomoyo quickly pulled him out and helped him recover. Jirai was genuinely grateful and hugged Tomoyo in relief. After Hatoko dismissed the water, Chifuyu suddenly appeared. Hatoko admitted that she still was not used to Chifuyu appearing out of nowhere like that. Soon after, Sayumi arrived and asked Jirai to tone down his behavior in the clubroom. She approached him and used her power to dry his clothes. Sayumi then informed everyone that the student council had issued a warning because of complaints from the neighboring club, particularly regarding the frequent noise coming from the literature club room. Jirai apologized for his behavior. Once all the members of the literature club had gathered, Sayumi officially began their monthly supernatural power inspection. They headed to an open area where everyone began demonstrating their abilities. Chifuyu created a formation of spears and launched them as an attack, but Hatoko used wind manipulation to knock the spears out of the air. At first, Hatoko intended to burn them, but after realizing the spears were made from a material that was difficult to ignite, she changed her strategy. Since Hatoko had relied on fire in previous battles, Chifuyu had anticipated that approach and deliberately created spears that would be resistant to flames. Chifuyu's ability was known as Creation of Existence, a power that allowed her to create virtually anything, even entire spatial dimensions. Meanwhile, Hatoko possessed unlimited elements which gave her control over 5 different elements: earth, water, fire, wind, and light. Their battle continued as Hatoko unveiled a new technique by combining fire and earth. She caused magma to erupt from the ground beneath them. In response, Chifuyu created massive rocks to contain the flowing magma. Even then, Chifuyu was still reluctant to acknowledge Hatoko's growth, while Hatoko continued increasing the amount of magma she summoned. Jirai began to feel that both Hatoko and Chifuyu were getting carried away by their competitive spirit. Sayumi then asked Tomoyo to step in and stop them. With a simple snap of her fingers, Tomoyo instantly placed both Hatoko and Chifuyu back into their chairs. She told them to end the match because they had become overly excited. The purpose of the day's event was only to examine and demonstrate their abilities, so there was no need to take things that far. Realizing they had become too immersed in the competition, Hatoko and Chifuyu apologized. Tomoyo's power was time control, an ability that allowed her to manipulate the flow of time. While she could not reverse time, she was capable of accelerating, stopping, or slowing it down whenever she wished. Jirai thanked Hatoko, Chifuyu, and Tomoyo for showcasing their powers. Tomoyo was confused about why she was being thanked as well. Jirai explained that she had worked hard to stop time and bring the battle to an end. Hearing that, Tomoyo's face immediately turned red with embarrassment. Hatoko and Chifuyu agreed that Tomoyo had done a great job. Their praise only made Tomoyo even more embarrassed. Hatoko then remarked that Tomoyo probably would not have needed to go through all that trouble if she had appeared a little earlier, since both Hatoko and Chifuyu would have stopped on their own. Jirai quickly scolded Hatoko for making that comment. He argued that Tomoyo's intervention had become a perfect showcase of her abilities, especially her power to stop time. Hearing that only made Tomoyo even more embarrassed. Hatoko wondered why Tomoyo had gone to such lengths in the first place. Jirai explained that it simply looked cool. He then asked Hatoko not to ruin the moment and to let Tomoyo enjoy her achievement. Chifuyu jokingly commented that Tomoyo seemed to be affected by the same dramatic tendencies as everyone else. Tomoyo became so embarrassed that it seemed she might never want to use her supernatural powers in front of everyone again. It was originally Tomoyo's turn to demonstrate her abilities, but Jirai suggested skipping her presentation since everyone had already witnessed her power moments earlier. The next person up was Sayumi. She admitted that her ability had not changed very much. She gently placed her hand on Chifuyu's shoulder and used her power to restore her appearance to normal. Sayumi's ability was called Restoration of Justice. It allowed her to restore anything she touched back to its original state, although the full extent of the power was still unclear. With the demonstrations complete, Sayumi officially concluded the 6th supernatural ability examination. However, Jirai pointed out that the main attraction had not yet been shown. None of his friends had seen him demonstrate his own power. Chifuyu immediately argued that there was no need for Jirai to show his ability at all. Jirai was shocked by everyone's reaction and insisted on demonstrating it himself. Just as he was about to begin, Mirie, the student council president, suddenly entered the room and startled him. Everyone panicked and quickly returned the room to its normal condition. Mirie explained that she had come to inspect the literature club. She mentioned that several nearby clubs had submitted complaints about the noise coming from their room. She also found it strange that the room smelled as if something had recently been burned. No one answered her questions. At that moment, Jirai suddenly smiled and walked toward Mirie. He confidently claimed that he had known her true identity for a long time. He suggested that she had been hiding something and asked whether this inspection was simply an excuse to make contact with the literature club members. Tomoyo, annoyed by Jirai's wild assumptions, immediately shut down his rambling with a firm response. Sayumi apologized to Mirie and admitted that Jirai sometimes had a tendency to let his imagination run away with him. To everyone's surprise, Mirie asked how Jirai had figured it out. She revealed that she had indeed been observing the literature club members for quite some time. The complaints from the other clubs had merely been a convenient excuse. She confessed that she had been keeping an eye on them and further revealed that she had also obtained a supernatural ability. Jirai was completely stunned. Up until that point, he had only been making random guesses. Even so, he tried to maintain the appearance of someone who had known the truth all along. Sayumi could hardly believe that Jirai had accidentally created an entire scenario that turned out to be correct. She then asked Mirie what her real purpose was for coming to the literature club room. Mirie replied that she would explain everything if they could defeat her first. Jirai was shocked to discover that Mirie was challenging them to a battle. Mirie assured them that the confrontation would not be life-threatening, although it might leave them with a few aches and pains before it was over. Tomoyo was about to use her time-stopping ability to defeat Mirie, but Jirai stopped her because he wanted to step forward himself. Tomoyo and Hatoko were not convinced, but Jirai confidently claimed that he could defeat Mirie. Jirai declared that his power was the ability to knock on the gates of hell. He explained that the reason he always wore a jacket to school was to seal the magic hidden within his body. He then removed the jacket and threw it aside, claiming that it weighed 100 kilograms. Hatoko caught the jacket and immediately pointed out that it was not heavy at all. Jirai, however, praised her for supposedly controlling gravity. Sayumi knew that Jirai was simply putting on an act. Jirai began concentrating in an attempt to unleash his power. Tomoyo was not sure whether Jirai's ability could defeat Mirie, but Sayumi encouraged everyone to trust whatever Jirai was about to do. According to her, no one had become more connected to their own power than Jirai. Chifuyu even asked Tomoyo whether it was really okay to leave everything to him, and Tomoyo responded with nothing more than a smile. As Jirai nervously recited his chant, he stumbled over the words and briefly lost his place. Eventually, a small blue flame appeared in his hand. Unfortunately, Mirie effortlessly took the power away from him. Jirai was shocked and could not believe that his ability had been stolen so easily. It turned out that Mirie's supernatural power allowed her to take other people's supernatural abilities. Jirai could hardly accept that the dark flame power that had been with him for 6 months was suddenly gone. He even admitted that he greeted it every morning and every night before going to sleep. Tomoyo was amazed that Jirai had become that attached to his power. Desperately, Jirai demanded that Mirie return the only supernatural ability he possessed. Mirie found it surprising that Jirai's power merely produced a dark flame that was neither particularly exciting nor hot. In her opinion, it was completely useless in a fight, and Sayumi agreed with that assessment. When Mirie asked whether the dark flame contained any hidden abilities, Hatoko immediately answered that it did not. Mirie then declared that Jirai's supernatural power was meaningless. Her words deeply hurt Jirai because that power meant a great deal to him. After considering Jirai defeated, Mirie asked his friends to step forward and show her their abilities. Tomoyo approached Mirie, who requested that Tomoyo demonstrate her supernatural power. Tomoyo replied that there was no reason to do so because she did not want her ability to be stolen. She had already figured out that Mirie could only take a power after witnessing it being used. Mirie immediately became nervous. Tomoyo then suggested settling things without relying on supernatural abilities. Looking uneasy, Mirie insisted that she could still use Jirai's power against them. Tomoyo casually pointed out that Jirai's ability was not particularly useful in combat anyway. Sayumi smiled and said there was no need for 5 people to fight one opponent. As the club president, she would handle Mirie herself. She also mentioned that she had recently earned a black belt in both judo and karate. Sayumi confidently stated that Mirie might be about to experience something intimidating, and that confidence only made Mirie more nervous. When Sayumi secured a firm hold on her arm, Mirie quickly apologized. Not long afterward, Mirie left the clubroom. Earlier, Mirie had explained that her power had awakened only a month ago. If she had been completely alone, the ability would have been practically useless. Ever since the appearance of supernatural powers, she had been living with fear and confusion. 1 month earlier, Mirie had received a message from an unknown number informing her that members of the literature club also possessed supernatural abilities. From that day on, she began observing the club members. To her, the literature club members had initially been the source of her anxiety and fear. Because of that, she challenged Jirai and the others first so that she would not be looked down upon. Eventually, Jirai's power was returned, and it became clear that Mirie was not actually a bad person. The real issue now was the mysterious number that had sent the message. Sayumi believed that it meant someone had intentionally awakened their powers. The group became convinced that there were still more events waiting to unfold. Meanwhile, an unknown man was secretly watching them from a distance. He was surprised that the 5 members had managed to deal with Mirie so easily. That day, the members of the literature club were gathered in the clubroom discussing nicknames for themselves. Tomoyo wondered why they even needed to come up with nicknames in the first place. Jirai was surprised that Tomoyo was still asking about it when everyone had already agreed. In reality, Jirai had simply persuaded Chifuyu to support his idea, making it difficult for the others to object. As far as Jirai was concerned, if everyone had agreed, then they should commit to it wholeheartedly. Chifuyu commented that it sounded fun to give it a try. Hearing that, Tomoyo eventually went along with Jirai's suggestion. Jirai asked Hatoko to reveal the nickname she had prepared. It turned out that Hatoko had chosen Hatoko the Red. Jirai immediately rejected it, saying it was too ordinary. Hatoko tried changing the color in the title several times, but Jirai continued to reject every version. She then suggested Hatoko the comic heroine, but Jirai felt that it did not suit her. Hatoko insisted on it anyway, and in the end, Jirai approved because the nickname clearly made her happy. After that, Sayumi finished preparing her nickname. She seemed a little uncertain about it. The nickname she chose was Snow Woman. She had also prepared several alternatives, including Snow Princess, Iron Maiden, Sleeping Princess, and War Dancer. Jirai praised all of Sayumi's nickname ideas. He explained that he always saw Sayumi as an older sister type, so he expected her to choose something involving a witch or a queen. Instead, she had picked several surprisingly cute names. Hearing that, Sayumi's face turned red. Jirai even wondered if she was fond of princess characters. Shortly afterwards, Sayumi quickly left for the restroom. Jirai had no idea what had happened. Tomoyo remarked that he had stepped on a landmine. Jirai looked completely confused and did not understand what she meant. Hatoko also commented that Jirai had gone a little too far with what he said to Sayumi. Next, Chifuyu wanted to reveal her nickname. The nickname she chose was Orange. Unfortunately, Jirai did not approve of it. Chifuyu looked disappointed and reminded him that everyone was supposed to be free to choose their own nickname. Unable to refuse after seeing her pleading expression, Jirai eventually agreed. Inspired by the dramatic words about darkness that Jurai often used, Chifuyu even changed it to orange. Jurai asked if she had prepared any other options. It turned out that Chifuyu had a long list of alternatives, including mom, old lady, troublemaker, and stray cat. Jurai immediately requested that she avoid nicknames related to family matters. Chifuyu then suggested another nickname, Pineapple, because she loved sweet and sour pork with pineapple. Because of that, she wanted everyone to call her Pineapple instead. Not long afterwards, Sayumi returned from the restroom. At that moment, Tomoyo revealed the nickname she had created for herself, Endless Paradox. Jurai was instantly fired up when he heard it. Tomoyo explained that the nickname was inspired by Jurai's passionate speeches. Jurai declared Tomoyo the winner of the nickname contest. He praised her enthusiastically, referred to her as both a master and a teacher, and even asked the other club members to give her a round of applause. Suddenly, Mirie arrived to scold the literature club members because they had been so noisy that their voices could be heard from outside the room. Mirie also had another reason for coming. She wanted to talk to Jurai about a letter she believed he had written to her. The statement shocked Jurai and the others. Jurai himself had no idea what Mirie was talking about. Mirie explained that she believed Jurai had expressed special feelings toward her through the letter. Tomoyo could not understand why Mirie would think that Jurai of all people had sent such a message. Mirie then wondered whether Tomoyo might have feelings for Jurai as well. Tomoyo's face immediately turned red and she denied it. According to her, she would rather spend time with girls than become interested in someone as eccentric as Jurai. Mirie told Tomoyo that it would be better if she stayed out of the matter. Tomoyo then demanded that Jurai explain the situation regarding the letter. Jurai insisted that it was all a misunderstanding and claimed that he did not even know what Mirie was talking about. Mirie was confused by his denial because she had found the letter in her shoe locker. Tomoyo became visibly irritated and confronted Jurai about it. Jurai continued insisting that it was not a love letter. Mirie then read the contents aloud. The letter stated that their previous battle had left a strong impression on him. It described how Mirie's remarkable strength had captivated him and inspired his admiration. Because of those feelings, Jurai had given her the title Grateful Lover. Jurai explained that he had only given out an official document containing the name he had chosen based on his power. Tomoyo realized that Mirie had probably misunderstood the situation, so she asked how Mirie could have mistaken it for a love letter. Mirie explained that when it was read from top to bottom, it clearly sounded like a love letter. According to her, breaking down each phrase made it even more convincing, especially the line about someone's incredible power reaching a lonely heart. She thought it was an impressive expression because it conveyed genuine feelings. The title Grateful Lover that Jurai had given her also moved her deeply because she interpreted the word lover in its romantic sense. Tomoyo then asked Jurai why he had used the word lover in Mirie's title. Jurai explained that he had not intended it to mean a romantic partner and that he had been using it in a completely different context. Tomoyo wondered why he had not simply used words like hunter or thief instead. Jurai replied that they had already identified the source of the misunderstanding and now needed to solve it. Jurai tried calling out to Mirie, but she responded gently and asked him to use her real name. Jurai was surprised by how sweetly she was acting. Mirie even wanted to use an affectionate nickname for him. Tomoyo immediately blushed and asked Hatoko for help. Unexpectedly, Hatoko was so flustered that she accidentally poured tea until it overflowed from the cup. Chifuyu openly stated that she was not willing to hand Jurai over to Mirie. Tomoyo asked Mirie to calm down and reconsider her decision, arguing that spending her youth dating someone as gloomy as Jurai would be a waste. Mirie could not understand why Tomoyo kept trying to stop her. She began teasing Tomoyo and jokingly suggested that Tomoyo might simply dislike her because of their physical differences. Tomoyo felt insulted and lost her temper, activating her power to trap Mirie within a space-time barrier. However, the moment Tomoyo used her ability, Mirie stole it. Mirie pointed out how careless Tomoyo had been. Jurai immediately begged Mirie to return Tomoyo's power. He even called her by her real name, which only made Mirie like him more. Since she already viewed Jurai as someone very special, she gladly agreed to his request. Mirie returned Tomoyo's ability and told Tomoyo that she should be grateful for Jurai's kindness. Tomoyo became annoyed and started arguing with Mirie again. The two continued bickering while Jurai desperately tried to calm them down. After school, Mirie waited near the door of Jurai's classroom. She greeted him with an affectionate nickname, catching him completely off guard. Mirie wanted to walk home with him, but unfortunately she still had student council duties to take care of. Jurai hurried toward the club room, yet Mirie continued following him because she wanted to accompany him for a little while before returning to the student council room. Jurai found it somewhat troublesome, but Mirie insisted that she simply wanted to spend a little more time with him. Mirie asked for Jurai's email address and even showed him her own email account, which now included Jurai's name. She admitted that she had changed it because she could not stop thinking about him. Jurai was left speechless by her unexpected behavior. When they arrived in front of the literature club room, Mireille encouraged him to do his best and jokingly reminded him not to get distracted by the many cute girls in the club. Jirai honestly had no idea how he was supposed to respond to any of it. As soon as he entered the club room, he discovered that his friends had been secretly watching him through the doorway. Jirai asked what was going on, but they all claimed that nothing had happened. He tried asking Tomoyo directly, but she told him to ask himself instead. Taking her words literally, Jirai began talking to himself. Tomoyo then scolded Jirai for acting overly close with Mireille in front of everyone, saying that it was inappropriate. Jirai denied the accusation because nothing like that had actually happened. Tomoyo remained convinced that Jirai must have enjoyed all the attention, especially since Mireille was attractive and popular. Hearing that, Jirai jokingly asked whether Tomoyo was jealous. Tomoyo immediately blushed and denied it, wondering why she would ever be jealous of him. Jirai clarified that he meant the kind of jealousy a single person might feel toward a couple. Tomoyo's face turned even redder because she had misunderstood what he meant. Jirai then asked Hatoko for some tea, but Hatoko informed him that she was currently in silent mode. Jirai pointed out that if she truly intended to ignore him, she should not have responded at all. Hatoko then asked what she was supposed to do when ignoring him. Jirai told her to figure it out herself. At that moment, Chifuyu appeared to be sulking. Jirai tried to start a conversation with her, but Chifuyu used her puppet, Lee-sun, as her spokesperson because she was currently refusing to talk to Jirai directly. Jirai took Lee-sun away and Chifuyu asked him to give it back. However, Jirai kept teasing her by repeatedly taking Lee-sun away whenever she tried to get it. Feeling upset, Chifuyu complained to Hatoko and said that Jirai had become a mischievous child. Instead of helping, Hatoko suggested that they both ignore him for a while. Jirai then tried to start a conversation with Sayumi, but she immediately rejected him in a rather cold manner. A moment later, however, she calmly answered his question and corrected what she had said. It turned out that what she had really been asking was why Jirai existed in this world. Sayumi admitted that she felt like teasing him if he continued showing the affectionate behavior he had displayed earlier. Jirai was confused because, from his perspective, Mireille was the only one acting that way. In reality, Sayumi and the others understood that Mireille was the only person behaving like that as well, but they simply disliked the situation itself. Sayumi never expected that Jirai would lose sight of his usual self because of feelings related to romance. She brought up a possible solution to the problem, but Jirai said it was unnecessary. Since the issue had been caused by his own mistake, he believed he should resolve it himself. That afternoon, Jirai met with Mireille and sincerely apologized. He explained that what he had given her was not a love letter. He also clarified that grateful lover was only a nickname and that the word lover in that context was not intended to mean a romantic partner. Instead, it referred to someone closer to a robber or thief. Jirai admitted that he had lied because he wanted to appear cool. He also confessed that the reason he wrote the letter had not been because he was romantically interested in Mireille. He repeatedly apologized and expressed genuine regret for the misunderstanding. Mireille asked him not to bow his head so easily, believing that he should not blame himself to that extent. She admitted that she had also been at fault for making assumptions and felt that she was actually the one who should apologize for causing him trouble. As she spoke, Mireille's body trembled slightly and she struggled to hold back her tears. Even so, she insisted that the misunderstanding had not hurt her. Jirai found it painful to see her in that condition and continued apologizing again and again. Eventually, tears began to fall from Mireille's eyes. She then claimed that she needed to go shopping and hurried away, clearly wanting to leave before her emotions became even harder to contain. Jirai watched as she stumbled several times while walking away, and he deeply regretted causing her so much distress. Not long afterward, Tomoyo arrived and pointed out that Jirai had made Mireille cry. However, she believed that what had happened was ultimately for the best. If Jirai had simply distanced himself without explaining anything, Mireille would likely have been left with even more painful memories. It was better to resolve everything as soon as possible. Jirai agreed with her assessment. Tomoyo explained that although the situation had started because of Jirai's mistake, Mireille's assumptions had also contributed to the misunderstanding. Because of that, she felt that Jirai should not be so hard on himself. Jirai, however, felt disappointed in himself. Tomoyo then asked why he had chosen the word lover instead of hunter or thief. The reason turned out to be surprisingly simple. She had only been matching the character count. All of their supernatural abilities used kanji followed by katakana, and she had simply assigned additional character numbers to maintain consistency. Once Tomoyo realized this, she assumed that Jirai had only wanted Mireille's title to fit neatly alongside everyone else's. She even thought he had been focusing on something rather insignificant. However, Jirai revealed his real reason. He wanted everyone to become stronger through unity. Many people ranked strength using letters or levels, but he believed that such things meant very little if people could not work together. His goal was for them to become the strongest team among any group they might encounter. Jirai reflected on how Mireille had faced many difficulties alone, unlike him and the others, who had gone through their challenges together as a group of 5. At the very least, he wanted her title to place her on equal footing with the rest of them and show that she was one of their own. Unfortunately, the result had been the complete opposite of what he intended. Tomoyo assured him that whenever Jirai sincerely conveyed his feelings to someone, those feelings would eventually reach them. Jirai smiled after hearing that. Their eyes accidentally met, but Tomoyo immediately became flustered and looked away. She then told him to get rid of that overly dramatic side of himself. Jirai replied that even if the world changed, he would always remain true to who he was. Later that night, Mirie sent Jirai a message. She expressed her hope that they could continue being good friends. She sincerely apologized once again and thanked him for creating a special nickname for her. That day, Jirai was called to Ms. Shiharu's office to discuss a test he had taken recently. The teacher had been puzzled by his habit of using unusually difficult kanji in his answers. It turned out that he simply thought it made him look cooler. Ms. Shiharu had often wanted to cross out the ridiculous wording in his test responses, but technically nothing was wrong with them and his grades were always high. She admitted that she was tired of grading Jirai's exams and decided that she would leave that task to Sayumi in the future. As for herself, she would rather spend the time resting. At that moment, Shizumu entered the room to retrieve something he referred to as his girlfriend. He woke Ms. Shiharu and asked for it back. However, the so-called girlfriend turned out to be a game console. Ms. Shiharu returned the console and reminded him not to play games during class. Shizumu insisted that he was not playing games and claimed that he was simply showing affection. Hearing that, Ms. Shiharu commented that both Shizumu and Jirai were equally troublesome. Jirai then brought up the fact that Shizumu had supposedly been dating a first-year student. Shizumu revealed that the relationship had already ended. According to him, it was the usual pattern where the other person ended the relationship, despite having been the one to confess first. Jirai suspected that the breakup had probably happened because Shizumu had spent time shopping for female character figures during a date. Shizumu denied that accusation and claimed that he had only been shopping for dating simulation games instead. The two quickly fell into one of their usual arguments, prompting Ms. Shiharu to remark that they seemed surprisingly close. Jirai refused to be compared to Shizumu, whom he described as an obsessive fan who only watched anime if it featured voice actors he liked. Shizumu, in turn, refused to be compared to Jirai, describing him as someone who constantly imagined himself as the main character whenever he watched anime. Ms. Shiharu pointed out that they were both otaku, but neither of them was willing to accept the comparison. Growing frustrated, she eventually chased them both out of her office. Afterward, Shizumu headed behind the gymnasium because a third-year student wanted to meet with him. Not long after, Sayumi appeared behind Jirai. He wondered what she was doing there. Sayumi casually mentioned that she definitely had not been observing the conversation between him and Shizumu as material for her imagination. Her comment caught Jirai completely off guard, and he quickly asked her not to say things like that. Soon afterward, Sayumi invited Jirai to the literature club room. That day happened to be the club's recreational outing. Jirai and Tomoyo began playing tennis against each other. Just as Jirai was about to score a point, Tomoyo reacted with surprising speed and returned the ball. Unfortunately, the ball struck the net and bounced back toward her. The tennis ball hit her in the face, causing her to fall over. Jirai teased her, suggesting that she should not have tried such a flashy shot near the net. Tomoyo admitted that tennis was far more difficult than she had expected. She realized that neither she nor Jirai was particularly skilled and felt that they would need natural talent like Sayumi and Hatoko to perform well. Tomoyo was especially surprised that Hatoko turned out to be such a good tennis player. Jirai explained that Hatoko had been playing tennis since middle school. Tomoyo commented that Hatoko was much more athletic than she appeared. A short while later, Jirai happened to notice Sayumi retrieving a tennis ball that had become caught inside part of her sports outfit. Tomoyo immediately scolded him when she noticed where he was looking. Jirai insisted that he had not intended to stare and claimed that he had only glanced in that direction by accident. Tomoyo replied that regardless of the circumstances, she still disliked being watched in situations like that. The exchange left Jirai once again concluding that girls could be very complicated. Everyone had been able to play tennis thanks to Chifuyu, who had created both the tennis court and the uniforms using her powers. After some time, Sayumi suggested that everyone switch partners. It was now Hatoko's turn to face Jirai. Jirai grinned and became determined to defeat her. Hatoko responded with a serve she called a fireball. At first, the tennis ball looked completely normal. Suddenly, however, it burst into flames and nearly singed Jirai's clothes. Hatoko pointed out that he should not have dodged the shot. Jirai had actually been thinking that, since both of them possessed fire-based abilities, he might have been able to return it. His interest immediately grew. He challenged Hatoko to determine who was the superior fire user. Jirai dramatically referred to himself as the conqueror of chaos. Just as he prepared to unleash his own fire power, Hatoko's flaming tennis ball landed directly on top of his head. Jirai's loud scream echoed across the court. After the tennis match ended, Hatoko apologized for putting Jirai in danger. Fortunately, Sayumi had used her restoration ability in time to help him recover. Jirai claimed that his brush with disaster had inspired a brand new nickname. He proudly pulled out a notebook, but Tomoyo immediately referred to it as a record of his embarrassing past. Jirai objected, insisting that it was not a record of embarrassing memories, but rather something he called the Bloody Bible. Tomoyo quickly pointed out a problem. The word written on the cover was not actually Bible. Instead, Jirai had accidentally written Vivre. The realization shocked him. Sayumi struggled to hold back her laughter while Jirai turned toward her in disbelief. After all, she had been the one who told him that the spelling was correct. Unable to contain herself any longer, Sayumi burst into laughter and apologized for giving him the wrong spelling. Tomoyo jokingly read the title aloud as Bloody Vivre and wondered how such a strange mistake had happened. Hatoko guessed that the error probably occurred because Jirai had purchased the notebook from the Vivre stationery store near the train station. Sayumi continued laughing while Jirai sat in complete embarrassment, unable to say a single word. After school, Tomoyo wanted to go to a karaoke place. Sayumi was interested as well, and so was Jirai. Unfortunately, Sayumi said that she would not join if Jirai came along. Jirai was confused and wondered if he had done something wrong. While they were on their way, Jirai mentioned that his Bloody Bible notebook had gone missing, even though he had wanted to write down a new nickname he had just come up with. Tomoyo was surprised and wondered how many nicknames Jirai thought of in a single day. Jirai decided to return to the school to look for the notebook, while everyone else headed home first. Hatoko was surprised to learn that Jirai could be so forgetful. Talking about nicknames reminded Hatoko of her grade school days when she was often called Hado Kebab. Although she did not truly mind the nickname, it had bothered her at the time. Jirai could not ignore such an unusual nickname, so he came up with a new one for her, Fire Phoenix. The other students thought the new nickname sounded overly dramatic and decided it was simpler to call her Hatoko instead. From that day forward, no one called her Hado Kebab again. Tomoyo wondered whether everything that happened had actually been part of Jirai's plan. Hatoko admitted that she had felt discouraged when people criticized her nickname. Looking back, she felt that Jirai had simply acted on what he wanted to do, but in the end, his actions had unexpectedly helped her. Sayumi commented that Jirai could be unbelievably foolish at times, but she also felt that he was someone others could rely on. Because of her restoration ability, Sayumi had once wondered whether it might be possible to bring the dead back to life. However, Jirai had helped her reconsider that idea. He had told her that no matter the reason, she should never attempt to revive the dead, whether human or animal. He sincerely hoped she would never pursue such thoughts. At the time, Sayumi came to understand that a power capable of reviving the dead probably should not exist in the world. She believed that if she had tried it and succeeded, it might have had a serious impact on her state of mind. Chifuyu also mentioned that Jirai had advised her not to use her power to create new life. Hatoko was surprised to realize that Jirai genuinely spent a great deal of time thinking about everyone's abilities. Sayumi pointed out that Jirai probably thought about their powers even more than they did themselves. He constantly considered, analyzed, imagined possibilities, calculated outcomes, and even created nicknames for those abilities, even if some of the names were a little over the top. In a way, it felt as though Jirai carried half of their burden for them. Tomoyo, however, found that difficult to believe. She was convinced that Jirai could not possibly spend that much time thinking about it. Sayumi agreed that Jirai was probably more focused on his favorite Chunibyo-style theories and imaginary rules. Chifuyu and Hatoko both agreed that such behavior was exactly what made Jirai who he was. Meanwhile, Jirai was still near the shoe lockers as he hurried back toward his classroom. To his surprise, a man was holding his Bloody Bible notebook. The man asked whether the notebook belonged to him. After Jirai confirmed that it was his, the man brought up a nickname written inside the notebook, Gilsha Sin Jirai. He praised the name and explained its meaning. According to him, Gilsha represented wrongdoing, while sin referred to a grave offense or transgression. Combined together, the name carried the image of an unforgivable sinner. He further interpreted it as a paradise for sinners and noted that Jirai's name could evoke the image of a cursed thunderbolt. The man was so impressed by the nickname that it gave him chills. He then returned the notebook to Jirai and showed him his own notebook, titled Reverse Crux, which he interpreted as a symbol of rebellion against divine authority. Curious, Jirai asked who the man really was. The man introduced himself as Kiryu Heldkaiser Lusai first. In everyday life, however, his name was Kiryu Hajime. Jirai and Hajime later went to a restaurant together for a meal. As Jirai read through Hajime's notebook, he examined each part of the elaborate name. Heldkaiser was described as a ruler of the underworld, while Lusai first evoked the image of Lucifer, the legendary rebellious angel. Jirai was thoroughly impressed. Hajime explained that he had originally planned to stop by the literature club, but instead he had stumbled upon something far more remarkable. When Jirai asked why he was visiting the club, Hajime revealed that he was actually a former member. Jirai could hardly believe it, and the encounter felt almost destined. A short while later, Hajime's phone rang. It appeared to be a call related to work. During the conversation, he spoke dramatically about failed negotiations, ceasefires, and bringing an end to conflict. He even claimed that it did not matter how powerful an opponent might be, because anyone who stood in his way would ultimately be defeated. Jirai was completely stunned as he listened to Hajime's intense conversation. Once the call ended, Hajime casually explained that it had simply been a phone call from his workplace. Hajime invited Jirai to continue discussing the name of their syndrome. Jirai wondered whether Hajime also considered it a syndrome. In response, Hajime questioned Jirai's own view of what a syndrome truly was. Jirai explained that he simply tried not to lie to himself. Hajime felt that explanation was not entirely accurate. According to him, syndromes came in many different forms, but they all shared the same underlying meaning. They often began with self-denial, creating alternative identities and imaginary worlds as a way of rejecting reality. At the same time, those feelings could also be interpreted as a desire to be acknowledged by others. Hajime believed that the foundation of the syndrome was an endless conflict between self-denial and the desire for recognition from others, something he referred to as the endless paradox. Not long afterward, Tomoyo arrived and greeted Jirai. She mentioned that she often visited the cafe to study and wondered whether Jirai had managed to find his bloody Bible. Jirai explained that the person sitting in front of him was the one who had found it. Hajime smiled and greeted Tomoyo as well. To Jirai's surprise, Tomoyo referred to Hajime as her older brother. Hajime clearly disliked being addressed that way and instead preferred to be called Kiryu Heldkaiser Lusai first. Tomoyo asked whether Hajime had finally decided to return and commented that he should have informed everyone. She wondered why he refused to come back home when the entire family was worried about him, especially since their father was no longer upset with him. However, Hajime continued to reject the idea of returning home. He asked Tomoyo to tell their father to keep sending his monthly allowance. Feeling that Tomoyo had interrupted his conversation with Jirai, Hajime decided to end the discussion. Before leaving, Hajime revealed another one of his self-proclaimed titles, the Angelic Hammer of Rebellion, a weapon said to possess the power to destroy darkness. He expressed his hope that he and Jirai would meet again someday. Jirai was shocked to learn that Hajime was actually Tomoyo's older brother. He was even more surprised to discover that the concept of the endless paradox had originally come from Hajime. Tomoyo felt embarrassed that Jirai had learned about it. She explained that although she and Hajime were siblings, they had different mothers. Kiryu was the surname of Hajime's mother's family. During their childhood, Hajime and Tomoyo had lived together, but Hajime had always used his mother's family name. Tomoyo went on to describe what Hajime had been like in the past. He had been talented in almost every area, intelligent, handsome, academically gifted, and athletic. He consistently ranked first or second on national examinations. Hajime had also been a member of the literature club. During middle school, he even competed in a national track and field championship. However, sometime during the previous year, Hajime had begun insisting that there was something fundamentally wrong with the world. From that point on, he dropped out of college and left home. Tomoyo then wondered whether Jirai had told Hajime about their supernatural abilities, since she had overheard Hajime mentioning darkness during their earlier conversation. Jirai assured her that he had never revealed anything about their powers. Even so, he admitted that he was impressed by Hajime's confidence, especially considering how calmly Hajime had left the cafe while leaving Jirai to pay for the meal. Tomoyo sincerely apologized for her brother's behavior. The next morning, while heading to school, Jirai noticed Chifuyu standing alone in front of the school gate. Curious, he wondered why she was not going inside. Chifuyu then revealed something completely unexpected. She explained that she had quit school. Jirai was stunned by what he had just heard.